Hey everyone, welcome back to the 4R70W Transmission Rebuild Series continued. Part 3. Removal of Fluid Pump Assembly, Intermediate Clutch Assembly, Reverse Clutch Assembly, Forward Clutch Assembly, Direct Clutch Assembly, and other related parts.
Next is the pump. I'm going to take the front pump out. Normally on the front pumps you would get a slide hammer puller. That works the best on these because you can get it with the momentum of the slide hammer. You can get the seal unsealed, the seal around the pump, get it to move, and also get it to just come straight up without doing any damage. We've got the transmission vertically mounted on our poor man's transmission stand here, which is a 5-gallon plastic bucket, and it works out well enough. We're going to get the front pump support pulled out from in the bell housing, the front end, so we can get all of the other internal parts out through the bell housing area. And again, there's several ways you can do it. You can get special tools, special slide hammer tools that will thread into a couple of specially threaded holes in this pump cover, and you could take those and slide hammer it right out. There's also a poor man's way of doing it, which is what I'm going to show you today, and it's same slide hammer type technique, but it's just using common tools that you may have or the hardware store will have. First thing is a couple of 12-inch lag bolts, basically, or carriage bolts, and these are 3/8 size, standard 3/8 thread here, probably, what is it, 3/8 by 20 or 3/8 by 16 thread, somewhere in there. But they will thread in to the 2 threaded holes on the pump cover, and they'll thread it enough, tighten it by hand, just snug it up by hand only, and they'll thread in enough and hold in order for you to loosen this front pump cover to get it on out. And let me show you how. I use a couple of large heavy sockets. This is going to be my weight for the slide hammer, and I'm just going to slide it right in there, screw that one in, like so, just where it's snug. Take my other carriage bolt with another large 1/2-inch socket, impact socket preferably since it's heavier. Screw this one in to the other threaded hole in the pump cover. Alright, and that's all you need to get this pump loosened up, this pump assembly. So just a little bit of upward impacts, okay, and it'll start popping on up, and there you go. Alright, and there's your pump. Alright, no problem. Save you a few bucks on trying to buy special tools. Just make them at home. So that's up to you how you want to handle it, but this is just a suggestion. The poor man's method, it saves you some money. So the next thing we're going to do is get the rest of the parts out, and we'll continue with that in just a moment after I secure this front pump cover so it won't roll off my table. So our next task here, as far as parts removal, is to get the intermediate clutch, reverse clutch, and forward clutch assembly. It all comes out as one assembly. Get all that out of the way. So we've got the intermediate clutch, the intermediate one-way clutch, reverse clutch, and the forward clutch assembly. It's all going to come out together when you pull this shaft right out the front, the input shaft here. So the main thing you want to watch out for here is when you pull it out carefully so that you don't do any damage to the overdrive clutch band material. If it's a good clutch band still, you don't want to damage it. it can get caught by the reverse clutch lugs on this assembly, so just be careful with that. Alright, you just grab the top of it. Alright, just gently pull it straight up. Alright, you may have to rotate it slightly one way or the other, and usually the forward clutch or the overdrive clutch band will stay in there. Sometimes it will come up with the assembly and be riding right here. So just be real careful as you're pulling this assembly up. This is what you're going to end up with, alright, when it comes out. And like I say, occasionally the overdrive clutch band will be with it, and sometimes it won't when it pops loose. Next thing, if it's in here still, is your overdrive clutch band. Alright, that's what you have there. You have your overdrive servo that pushes against this detent here. You've got a lug in the transmission case that rests against this one, so the action of the servo pushes that band and closes it around the hub or the drum and grips it. So that's essentially how that works in simple terms. Get that on the table. Now obviously when you take these parts out, if you intend to do a proper job, you want to take each individual part and you're going to have to measure according to specs to see whether or not you have good parts. That's going to involve visual inspection, it's going to involve measurement, miking, things like that to determine whether or not you have good parts to work with, or if you're going to have to replace most of the parts in here in the case. That I'm leaving up to you. We're not going to get into that much detail. This is mainly a disassembly, check and reassemble type operation with a few new parts involved. Alright, the next thing is going to be the hub. There's a hub assembly down here and a number 3 hub bearing. We're going to go ahead and get it pulled out. The front clutch hub. That's a forward clutch hub assembly. It's right down in here. Let me go ahead and see if I can move this camera. See if give you a view of what that's going to look like. Alright, that's what you're looking like so far. So we're going to get that forward clutch hub assembly, which is this right here, and number 3 bearing, which is resting in the center of this clutch hub assembly. So we're going to take that out, just like so, and that's your next item. Okay, next thing we're going to do is remove the intermediate stub shaft, and that's the center shaft that you see right here. It's just a small 4-inch shaft. What I don't like is on this is the way it looks. It's loose, kind of dangling. So already I'm not liking the way it looks. We'll see what it looks like in there, but it just doesn't look right to me. So anyway, we'll pull this out, and that's all it is. It's roughly 4 inches long, and just slips right down in that hole. When you reassemble the transmission, please don't forget to replace that intermediate stub shaft. Put it back in there. Transmission won't work without it. The assembly that's going to come out next is, it's going to be the forward clutch sun gear. It's going to be the number 5 forward clutch sun gear bearing. It's going to be the reverse clutch sun gear and the number 4 forward clutch hub bearing. So all that's going to come out as an assembly past this guide pin here. Alright, got a bearing here. Turn around, sun gear. Next thing is the center support retaining ring. Point that a little bit better. You got one tab right here. Alright, in alignment with the guide pin, overdrive pin. Alright, and here is the other one, right here. on the other side of the guide pin. We want to go ahead and remove this. So I'm going to grab it. Alright. Take it and just kind of squeeze it together. Squeeze both tabs together, see if that will free it up. Okay, just like that. So this is the orientation that it was in. Alright, when it was in place. Just keep that in mind. When it goes back together, you want to maintain that same orientation. Next step is going to be removal of the case to planet gear support spring, and that's this little spring right here. It's a small one. I don't know if I can get a flashlight. If it's too much glare, I'll try it. Alright. Hopefully that will help a little bit. See, that's a little bit too much glare there. I'll try to back it off. Right there, okay, is a little support spring. It rests right between the shell here, the Planet Gear shell, and the case, and that's the next thing to remove. So be careful. You can take a little hook, something like that, to grasp a hold of it and pull it straight out. There it goes. Alright, so that's what it looks like there. It's got a little bit of tension to it, so just be careful not to lose that. Let it pop out and lose it in the shop somewhere. Very important to put that back in place. Okay, next we're going to remove the planetary gear support. Okay, now we're going to remove the reverse clutch band. All right. Got a little material left on it. Okay, next thing to remove is a retaining ring. Retaining ring goes around the case. And there's the gap between the two ends of the ring. You got to remove the retaining ring in order to get the output shaft and output shaft ring gear assembly out of there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I already see a problem. And I see why that intermediate shaft didn't look right. We've got a worn out output shaft coupling, basically, where the intermediate shaft slides in and engages with the output shaft. Wow. I don't know if you can see this. I want you to see if I can get in closer. See that? That's where you have the good part of the inside diameter of the shaft, and then you have this part that's totally wallowed out, almost worn completely through. Wow. I'm going to spin this around. We're looking at this inside diameter of that shaft. Alright. The orientation was like that when it was down in here. Basically right there. Dug it out. Okay. That's your output shaft retaining ring. Okay, so lastly we should be able to get this output shaft and ring gear assembly out of here. Okay. Wow. Well, that's where all the metal was coming from, obviously. Not pretty. Not pretty at all. Look how thin that wall is. This is the direct clutch assembly, by the way. You should be able to get it all out as an assembly. The output shaft and this direct clutch assembly all come out together, but I took the direct clutch out and then went ahead and pulled the output shaft assembly out with ring gear. Alright, and that pretty much gets you right down to the bottom of the case. Last but not least in this operation is the number 9 case rear bearing. And that leaves just the bushing in the rear of the housing. But we're just going to check that, you know, see if it's still good. If it is, we're not going to take it out, just going to leave it in there. So, number 9 rear bearing assembly. Well, that's the last item at this point.